G2 have been on an incredible miracle run during VCT Masters Shanghai. Is this win streak a fluke, or is this team a real contender? Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are talking about G2's impressive performance at VCT Masters Shanghai so far. They are in the top 4, they're in the upper final, so they do have a chance to qualify for the grand final. So let's talk about how they've gotten here and if this team actually has a chance to take the whole thing. So this is the board we have today. We have the matches that they've played so far, as well as some stats for both the players and maps they've played on. And I think one thing that stands out to me about this team is the fact that while they are performing very well, if you look at the individual stats, there's nothing that's too exciting. There isn't really a player that's standing up above the rest in terms of everybody else in the tournament. This team doesn't seem to have a Demon 1 at Champs or a Durka at Tokyo. So we're going to go through it all, starting with their match against T1. This match took place on May 23rd at the very beginning of the Swiss stage, and G2 were able to take it 2-1, and it was a pretty back and forth match. G2 took Breeze 13-8, and then T1 would take Icebox, absolutely dominating G2. 13-1 on G2's map pick, and Icebox being a map that G2 was known to be good on. And on the third map on Lotus, they were able to find the win, albeit in overtime, so just barely scraping by. So impressive win for G2, but at the same time, T1 is not known to be a top dog kind of team, so almost losing to them in the fashion that they did, it actually was pretty concerning. And then going into their match against Heretics, people would think, well, Heretics has looked like the better team, at least if you compare the first matches of both teams, but G2 would get it done and would win this one 2-1. Looked kind of dire for them at first. They did lose Lotus 13-9, but then they were able to recover on Bind, being their map pick 13-6, so really dominating that match. And then a similar story on Split. They started this map by winning the first 8 rounds, so taking that lead very early, which gave them leeway to allow Heretics to win a couple rounds, but not enough to bring it all the way back. So G2 definitely looking a lot better, improving upon what was a pretty shaky first match. Then on May 31st, we have their match against PaperX. PaperX choosing to play this team. PaperX being the top seed in Pacific were able to choose their opponent for the playoff stage, and they chose G2 because they thought that stylistically those two teams would match up well in favor of PaperX, but apparently no one told G2 that, and they were able to get the win. Definitely looking ugly for them at first, PaperX winning the first 11 rounds on Split, but then G2 were able to kind of steal the momentum, only allowing PaperX to get 2 on their defense side. Of course, those were the only 2 they needed, but as I said when I did a recap of this match, you could see the momentum switch as soon as G2 started to put together some wins, which would continue into Lotus with G2 tying it at the half 6-6, and then having a very solid defense side on quite an attacker side of map. So very good work from G2 against a very talented team. And then on Bind, all the momentum was in favor of G2, especially after how they won on Lotus, and they basically did to PaperX what PaperX did to them on Split. 10-2 at the half, they only needed 3 on that second half to win it. So they just upset one of the favorites of the tournament, and now they had to go into a rematch against Team Heretics. So the rematch buff potentially being in favor of Heretics. Heretics probably more motivated to win this match because they just lost to this team. However, that would not be the case. Not that Heretics made it easy for them, at least not at first. 10-2 in favor of Heretics at the half, then Heretics got the pistol, so they had an 11-2 lead. G2 were able to put together 5 rounds, but it just wasn't enough. Heretics would take it. Then it seemed like Ascent was going to go in a very similar fashion, but G2, wow, the resilience to win this map, insane. Very similar story, as I said. It was 10-2 at the half, and then Team Heretics get the pistol yet again. So they're at 11 rounds. They look like they're going to wrap this up very quickly, and then G2 win 11 rounds in a row to win the match. Some insane resilience on the side of G2 to just not feel demotivated to try your best when you're down by that large of a margin. Matches like these go to show that there is no safe lead in Valorant. And then G2 would carry the momentum of map 2 into map 3 on Lotus and just annihilate Heretics. 8-4 at the half, and then not allowing Team Heretics to win a single round on the second half. So there are some common themes and some common patterns that are showing up in these matches. First of all, G2 hasn't 2-0'd a team. They have always lost at least one match, and most of the time it seems to be that first map. The only first map of a match that they've won is against T1 at the beginning of the tournament. So those are some echoes of C9 during the regular season stage. C9 would always lose the first map, but then just grind out the game. Very similar story at this tournament for G2, but they're doing it on the biggest stage in Valorant. So is that something that's sustainable? Is that something that shows that this team is never out of a match? They can always come back? Or are they getting kind of lucky and just have had better mental than the teams that they've played so far? I do think two things can be true at the same time, but in this case, G2, they seem to be doing what C9 was doing in the regular season, just better and at a more important time. But the sustainability factor, listen, if you're on a hot streak, then you could carry that for an entire tournament, and that's what they've been doing so far. But is this a bubble, and will the bubble burst before the tournament ends? Well, it will partially come down to this team's map pool, which on certain maps has been stellar, and then on an unexpected map, not so much. So starting from top to bottom from the three I've listed, I have 3 maps that they've done well on so far, and then 1 map that they probably should be doing better on. First of all, on Bind, they are undefeated currently, going 2-0 on that map with an attack win percentage of 79%, very solid number there, and a defense win percentage of 54. So maybe you want that defense to be a little bit better, but a nearly 80% attack win rate is pretty uncommon, and it is very impressive for G2. They have 26 round wins on this map and 11 rounds lost so far during Shanghai. Then moving on to Lotus, they have looked very good on this map as well, but their stats on this map are definitely a bit confusing because they don't seem to play the map like other teams do. Currently during Shanghai, they are 3-1 on this map, an attack win percentage of 45%, which is much lower than I expected it to be, and a defense win percentage of 65. They have 49 round wins and 39 round losses. So for Lotus, a map that typically teams that have been really good on that map usually have a very high attack percentage. For G2, defense is the name of the game on this map, and that is actually a very, very good quality, and maybe that's the main reason why they are doing so well on this map. Because while other teams' attack side is much more important to those teams, because if they don't do well on that side, then if they're going into the second half defending, then they're probably going to lose. For G2, it doesn't matter as much. They don't have as much pressure on that attack side. They mainly just have to win it on their defense. And if you can shut down some really high flying and some really talented offenses in Valorant, then you're in a really good spot. But the map that is definitely concerning for this team is Icebox. Now, the record on Icebox this year has been pretty up and down. During the regular season stage, they had a good streak on that map, but then during playoffs, it wasn't as good. So their overall record is kind of up and down, but at Shanghai, it's been going down. They are 0-2 on that map, not winning a single time they've played on it. Their attack side is an abysmal 14%, and their defense side is a not so good 30%. They've only won 8 rounds on that map, and they've lost 26. So this is a map that in the past they've been known to be good on, but they haven't been able to find their footing during this tournament, and it being a very big stage, that definitely is a concern. Thankfully, they've made up for it with Bind and Lotus, but if one of those maps starts to falter, then Icebox isn't that safety net that this team has. So they definitely want to improve the numbers on that map if they end up playing it, but I don't know how successful they're going to be if they have the numbers on the map that they do. Moving on to the individual player stats at this tournament so far, and this is kind of what I was talking about they don't really have a standout player. In terms of best performance stats wise, we do have Leaf, and usually for these videos where I put stats on, I do VLR rating, but for some reason with Shanghai, they don't allow you to see the VLR rating. They do this with like the China regular season stage 2, so I guess it's just a thing in China where they don't want to show the rating, but that seems odd, and it's gonna really throw off how I combine stats from multiple tournaments. So that's annoying. So VLR, please fix that if you can. I don't know why that is, but it's just any tournament in China, you just can't see the rating. So we go with ACS instead. Anyways, Leaf has an ACS of 221.3 throughout this tournament. Kills per round is a 0.78 and a KD ratio of 1.11. He's been playing very well on the Sentinel role, playing Killjoy and Cypher, but also a little bit of Viper in there as well. This is the most important tournament of Leaf's life. He has not been this close to winning a tournament in Valorant. He had years of falling short on C9, so it seems like this man is on a mission to finally get his first trophy. Moving on to Jonah P, who has had a very good tournament as well. He has an ACS of 211.3, a kills per round of 0.76, and a KD ratio of 1.12, which is the best on the team. Mainly playing Initiator with Sky, Breach, and KO, but he also has played a little bit of Viper. Interesting on the comps for this team, they've taken Trent off of the Viper role, and they've put other players on it, including Jonah P and Leaf, and hey, it seems to be working out so far, and Trent has been very good on the initiator role, so doesn't really matter. But Jonah P has been playing very well for this team. At the end of the tournament, we might look back as him having the best performance at this tournament on this team, and that is the kind of player that you need to win a tournament. Moving on, we have Icy, who I definitely criticized early in the year when he was put on G2. He's playing the duelist role, but he isn't getting the same results as other top duelists in the region, and it is kind of still the case at Shanghai, but he has had some very impressive maps. He has an ACS of 202.2, a kills per round of 0.70, and a KD ratio of 0.96. He's played Raze, a little bit of Gecko, Yoru, and I think only one map on Jet. So with this team's compositions, they've definitely been putting IC on the Raze for the most part. Seems to be working out for them so far, and I think the KD ratio being low, that can be typical of some duelist players, because they're the ones that have to get the trades, they're the ones that have to make the space, so they're probably going to be the first one to die on their team, but as long as they get a kill, then it's fine. But at the same time, when you look at top duelists in the world, such as Ospas or Zekin, you see a much better KD ratio, a much better kills per round, and a better ACS. But IC is definitely doing his job as a duelist role, and he doesn't have to be the main guy on this team, and that definitely is the fault of other teams where their duelist player has to be the main guy doing everything. Leviathan can tell you about that with Ospas, but IC has been filling the role, he's been performing well, and it looks like he has been a very good part of this team so far. Moving on, we have Trent, who out of the 4 players I've listed so far is definitely struggling the most. He's an ACS of 189.8, a kills per round of 0.65, and a KD ratio of 0.92. He's been playing Fade, Sova, and Gecko, and Fade and Sova are very good roles for him. Trent in the past has been known as this team's best player. When he was on the guard, I remember coming into that first tournament that the guard played at Rankovic, many people were considering Trent to be the best player on this team, and possibly one of the best players in the world. Then they absolutely fall short at that tournament, and Trent was never really able to reach the same heights, but still be known as a very solid player in Valorant, and he definitely isn't having the tournament that he maybe wants to, but he's had some good matches, he's come up clutch when he's needed to, and the team is where he is partially because of him. Moving on, we have the IGL in Valorant, who understandably has the lowest stats in some of these categories. In ACS, he has 175.8, 8 kills per round of 0.64, and a KD ratio of 0.96. He has mainly been playing Smokes, playing Astra, Omen, Harmer, and Brimstone, but has played a little bit of Sage. Valen's value comes from his IGLing and his leadership abilities, and he is probably the main reason why this team is in the top 4. His calling has been great. He clearly has this team in a very good mental space, because to come back in the way that they have in some of these matches is incredibly impressive, and that has to come from your leader. If your leader continues to believe that you can win despite the score, then that is going to spread out throughout the roster, and it definitely has for G2. So maybe on a surface level, you can look at the stats of all these players and think, how is this team in the top 4? They have 3 players with KD ratios under 1. A lot of these players have died more than they've gotten kills. And my thinking behind this is it seems to be a symptom of the fact that they have lost a map in all the matches they've played. They've gone blown out on some maps, but they've been able to stay resilient, stay focused, stay composed, and just grind their way back to a victory. And that's a very good quality to have in the team, and it shows that stats aren't everything. I probably care more about stats than most people in the Valorant community, but I just like looking at them, and I think it tells an interesting story about how this team is performing and how these players have looked so far. Overall, do I see this team winning Shanghai? I don't know. I think they're very talented, but I think with Gen G coming up, that's going to be a very, very tough match for them. I could see that going either way, but Gen G just looked like a super team right now. It's going to be tough. And then how do they do in a grand final situation? Does the mental finally break? Does the bubble finally burst? And if they lose against Gen G, then have to play one of 100 Thieves or Heretics. Can they beat Heretics a third time? Probably. Can they beat 100 Thieves? They haven't been able to do it so far. So definitely a very interesting tournament so far for G2, and I'm very excited to see how it ends. So that is all we have to talk about today. Please let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think of this team's run so far? Do you think this team gets the job done, or is this run a bit of a fluke? Please click like if you enjoyed this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.